Hi folks. I have been needing to do my planting calendar for the garden for a very long time, and I finally got it done. I think it was easier because I'm getting closer to needing to do it, and so I was a little bit more interested. Yes, it started snowing this morning, but now the sun is trying to pop out from a little bit of blue patches. I last week transplanted out some little greens and stuff into the greenhouses, and that's just for early stuff, and later I'll need to do transplants for basil and cucumbers for the greenhouses. But right now I need to focus on what I'm going to need to plant out into the garden, because that's coming right up. Next week I need to start my transplants. So what I started with doing though was looking at when do the migrating birds come through, because I was hoping to be able to kind of time my plantings out there to take advantage of the birds, because like the robins and the fox sparrows will come through and kick up all in my beds and looking for bugs and worms, and they essentially kind of rototill my beds, which has been really nice. But if you have something already planted in there, then it's not very nice. And then later, the golden crown sparrows come through and they will eat the vegetation. That's what they're looking for. They will eat kale, bok choy, sugar snap peas, anything, and they will just nibble it down to the nib. And so I really have to watch out for those. So what I've seen was looking through my notes through the past years is that the robins and the fox sparrows come through like as early as, like the second week of April, and then they stay for a number of weeks. And then I first start seeing the golden crown sparrows usually more towards the end of April, probably when things are starting to shoot up, like the little vegetables are starting to shoot up. And then the golden crown sparrows stay as late as like the second week of May, I've seen them. And so I can cover up my beds with row cover and keep the birds out, but I do kind of like to have the fox sparrows and the robins and things kicking around and rototilling my bed. So I like to take advantage of that. So there's no way I can completely avoid having to kind of keep some things away from the birds. But I was thinking, like last year, I was like, okay, next year I'm going to direct seed my carrots. I'm going to do all my beds at once because they hold really well in the ground. But now I'm thinking maybe I should just do like one bed of carrots, put a row cover over that, and let the birds tear up all the other beds for me, and then plant some more carrots, in later weeks when the birds are gone. So I'm kind of thinking about that. We'll see how it goes. But at least I kind of have that pinned down a little bit better about when the birds start showing up and when they start leaving. So then I started looking at, my Salanova lettuce, which is my kind of main crop for my salad mixes. And I think, I've kind of gone back and forth and whether I should just do, direct seeded mixes of baby greens and cut those for my lettuce mixes, or whether I should go with my Salanova lettuce. I've noticed it seems like my customers like the Salanova lettuce mixes better. And so I think I'm going to focus on the Salanova lettuce. And I was looking at the days from when I seed them to when I transplant them out in the garden, and then from then to how long does it take for them to become mature and for me to be able to harvest them. And so when I'm starting my transplants early in April, it takes as much as 4 weeks for them to be ready to be transplanted out. And then it takes as much as 6 weeks more for them to be mature enough to harvest. And so then later, like towards the end of April or early in May, when I'm doing my next set of transplants for the lettuce, it may only be 3 weeks before they're ready to transplant out, and maybe even as early as 5 weeks more for them to be ready to be harvested. So I was looking at those numbers and planning in my calendar when I would do my lettuce, because I plan to do 3 successions of lettuce with each succession having 3 different patches. So my beds out there are 40 feet, and so I would do 20-foot patches each week. And then I know in the past I've said I am not going to do a second cut on my greens anymore, but with the Salanova lettuce it works pretty good to do a second cut, so that the next weeks I would do a second cut. So I would need to make my soil blocks next week. And so that's the first patch. Second patch would be April 17th. Third patch would be the beginning of May. And then I would cut on those. And so then I would need to seed my next patches, the 4th, 5th, and 6th patches of Salanova. Then I would cut off of those, and then I would seed my 7th, 8th, and 9th transplants of Salanova. And that puts my last harvest going on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd week of September, which would get me through my main season for the most part, because then I would be able to get a second cut off those. I'm a little bit worried that I'm planting my last succession of lettuce a little bit late, because in August here, it can kind of get a little bit less light, a little bit chill in the air. So I may have to rethink that a little bit. But along with my Salanova lettuce, I'm also going to be interplanting my green onion sets. And so I do those as transplants. And so I'm planning on doing like a batch of 80, do those all at once, and then they hold in their soil blocks pretty well. And so then I would plant them out each week that I was planting out the Salanova lettuce patches. So that's what I plan to do with that. And so this first week of April, I would need to do all of my transplants. So like also besides the lettuce, the kale, the collard greens, the chard and things like that. And then also the green onions. And then I'll also be seeding my leeks, which I'm not sure how I'm going to do. I've done those as transplants before, and I'm not sure how I'm going to grow them to transplant them out this year. But I've been thinking that a lot of times I'll kind of, my green onions will start looking pretty cruddy towards the end of the season. And so I think I might actually bunch and sell leeks. That's kind of my plan, because even though I'm thinking, okay, that's the end of my main season, is the end of September, I've been thinking, well, the leeks hold pretty well. I could plant a lot of carrots. I'll have garlic. Maybe I could sell into the fall or even eventually the winter, because I can dig carrots out from underneath. As long as they're covered in mulch of seaweed, I can get those out. And so I've been thinking, like, maybe I could sell those, later in the season, extend my season sales a little bit. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, besides the transplants that I would be starting the first week of April, I will need to be thinking about my basil and my cucumbers and my tomatoes. And so I've kind of got, tentative dates for those. The basil holds pretty good in the soil blocks until it gets warm enough. Maybe sometimes the beginning of May, but oftentimes it's not until the second couple weeks of May that I can get them out. Sometimes I've had my cucumbers just get too big in their transplants, and so I'm going even a week later than last year and seeding my cucumbers, and because I can even plant them out really small if I need to into the greenhouses. And so then I've also got kind of a tentative date for when I'll direct seed my stuff, like my carrots and beets, and if I'm doing greens like spinach and stuff like that, or baby chard for my salad mixes, maybe this third week of April, but it'll just really depend on the weather. If I get a couple dry days, I can get stuff seeded, and then, if there's a forecast for a lot of rain afterwards, because I like my stuff to get rained in and the germination is better that way. And so then, and I'm going to think about, do I do just maybe one bed of some things and then seed some other things after the birds have left, after they've had a chance to rototill my beds for me. So that's kind of the plan for that. I went out this week, and I was looking at my 3 garlic beds out there, and the shoots had been coming out of the ground, and I noticed that some of them weren't there anymore. And I was just a little bit worried that maybe the deer were nibbling on them, because they're out nibbling on the skunk cabbage that's coming up. And so I went ahead and put the fence up around the garden. I was taking a look at these garlic beds here that I uncovered last week, and some of the sprouts that were up, I don't see them. And I'm wondering, do deer eat garlic shoots? Alrighty, so the fence is up. What I like about this is that you can't really see it. So I've just got it snagged on the screws. This is the old fencing with smaller, zoingier plastic, and these have bigger holes. I still haven't decided which one I like better. Has anybody else had a problem with deer nibbling garlic shoots? And then a few days later, I got a little bit nervous thinking about, like, gosh, when are the birds going to show up? I mean, today is April 1st, you know, it's another week and they'll be here. What if they showed up early? And so then I went ahead and put row cover over all of my garlic beds, because in the past I had a little garlic bed that I had uncovered and didn't bother with, and the birds really did, you know, come through and claw through it. The garlic was fine, but it just makes me nervous that, like, maybe at the edges of these beds that they might pull out some actual cloves, garlic cloves. And so I covered them up. So I put my little wires on my 40-foot beds here, spaced about every 4 feet. So it takes about 11 little hoops per bed. And now I'm gonna put some Agribon row cover over the top of them. Oakley dokley. Just got these covered up, pinned down with rocks at the end, rocks rolled underneath. I need to figure out a better way to secure this cover. I've been saying that for years. I also went out and they've got the garden supplies and stuff at the stores, and I bought a bunch of potting soil. So normally I make my own transplant soil all through the years, but last year the soil that I made, for some reason it was killing my little seedlings. So I went as kind of like an emergency plan B, and I bought some potting soil. Now the stuff I got last year was like all full of sticks, and I was having to pull out the sticks and then make the soil blocks, but it worked fine. And so this year I was like, I'm just buying some potting soil. And so I went ahead and did that. Okay, so this guy is 1.5 cubic feet, and I thought that I was getting in 3 cubic feet last year. Okay, so this is the fertilizer. I got 10 bags. I probably don't need that much, but almost $200. So I think that I am all ready to start making soil blocks next week and get my garden planting started. I will see you guys then. Dear friend is right down there. Oh, you can't really see. Hey, buddy. Oh, I'm sorry I bothered you. I'm so bad.